parking lots, baseball stadiums, noon, night, well, mostly noon. Ohio State's ready to play anywhere. These are snap judgments. Right now, we're in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. That is Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. Buckeyes getting ready for a trip to Wrigley Field to play Northwestern. And they're excited, Bill. It's really cool. It's historic. They're so excited and not at all concerned that they're going to go Friday to take a look at it.
I actually don't think they're that concerned about it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. They are going to go on Friday to take a look at it. They don't normally do that. I think it makes sense because it's a different configuration. They are on opposite sidelines, which I didn't realize. I thought they were still going to have to stay on the same sideline as Northwestern. So they've at least figured that part out of it. They're going to go get the lay of the land a little bit. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be a cool environment for a football game on Saturday.
You're excited?
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting is maybe the word for it. But
unique, different. Yeah.
But I promise I'll stop talking about it and how I think that it's ridiculous for a Big Ten team to have to play in there. That's my personal opinion. Clearly, Chip Kelly, excited for a historic venue. Ryan Day, not trying to think about where they're playing at all. Will Howard, baseball fan. So that's what we learned. Those are the three people that talked on a Tuesday in the Woody. Yeah. There was football conversation. Mm-hmm. So we can probably move on to that.
We can. I actually thought that, so last week we noted that Ryan Day kind of went out of his way multiple times to mention Purdue. He didn't really do that today talking about Northwestern, but I think the message that he was repeating was establishing sort of a baseline of consistency that needs to be the identity of this team moving forward. They were really happy with how they approached that going into the game last week and obviously put that on the field in all three phases. And then he said, that was great. Let's do it again. And he asked sort of a hypothetical question, which I would imagine he said to the team quite a lot in the last few days and will continue to say this week, which was something along the lines of, is that who you are, or is that just a thing you did one time? And I think it'll be different once they get past this game because the opponent will obviously have their attention starting next week against Indiana, then moving forward for every game after that. But while they remain a 30-point favorite against Northwestern, that is the challenge for this team, is to come prepared and ready to play from the jump the same way they were against Purdue.
I wonder if Ryan Day feels like it might get old, or if the team would tune it out if every time they played a Purdue or a Northwestern as 30-point plus favorites, that he's treating them like playoff games or elimination games. Like maybe that's the risk, because he did not talk about this upcoming opportunity the same way that he did a week ago, which if what I described, if my hypothesis is correct, that would make sense, because he's going to have to do it and ramp up Ohio State in a week's time to get ready for Indiana in a top 10, top 8, top 5. Who knows what it's going to look like with the College Football Playoff Selection Committee by then, but like potentially that, two majorly important and clearly obvious elimination games that are not going to have massive spreads and are probably going to be more physically taxing than what's going to happen. Certainly what happened on Saturday against Purdue, and most likely what will happen at Northwestern.
Yeah, I think you have to freshen up the message, right? I think you're 100% correct that if he took the same approach with Northwestern, guys would be like, all right, we bought that for 1 week. Yeah. We know what these two teams are. I guess like Northwestern did beat Purdue, right, a couple weeks ago. So maybe that can have a high. I do think Northwestern is substantially better than Purdue on defense and slightly better than Purdue on offense. So it is a little bit of a ramp up, but it is still a 4+ touchdown spread for a reason. So I think it's good that Ryan Day is finding new messaging that I think if you combine that with it being in kind of a weird place, I think that might focus the team a little bit too. So I'm anticipating a similar performance from the Buckeyes this week.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a carryover too of some players mentioned in the post-game press conference that Ryan Day did not want them to be one-hit wonders. And so he is hammering this consistency point home. And for a lot of, in this stretch where younger players or different personnel groupings are playing, that would make that message could resonate as well. Probably not so much for a Jack Sawyer or a JT Tuimoloau, who've been doing this for a long time. But if Edric Houston makes his first start and it's, good, bad, removing the penalty, whatever, Bryson Rodgers, some of these other people who are getting an impact and a chance to make plays, like, okay, that's what Ryan Day's talking about. The practice field carried over to a game. You have flashed. Can you sustain that? I think that probably resonates more for playing depth and playing different packages, the Jack and other stuff that we'll get into that Ohio State is showing. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean Emeka Egbuka or Will Howard or even Jeremiah Smith, because these guys are proving it pretty consistently. But there are other players that they're trying to add to the equation here who are going to have the opportunity to back up what happened against Purdue against Northwestern.
I think the playing more depth might actually get everyone a little more fired up too, right? Like there were a lot of shots on Saturday of the defensive line in particular, I think, getting pretty excited for, like, I remember Josh Mickens' sack at the end of that game. Like JT and Jack were practically all the way onto the field celebrating that, and they were on the sideline with their helmet off. So I think there is, I don't know if reward is the right way to couch it, but I think there's something to, like, hey, like Jack, JT, Tyleik Williams are going to play this week, Emeka Ibuka, like, you guys want to get off the field? Go out there and put it on this team early. Then we get to have a nice time watching your younger teammates play too. So I think like kind of one thing feeds the other there.
I think that also feeds into something that we've been monitoring, certainly did coming out of the Purdue game, with getting those younger players, getting different personnel groupings involved early on in the game. And this is not to suggest that there was not buy-in before, but I mean a more collective, holistic, top to bottom investment. If you could be going in at any time, and your teammates are coming in and out, like, this is not a rotation conversation, not the same way that we've had it in the past. Like, using them where it's not like the first two quarters, if you are a third teamer or a true freshman, you don't really need to grab a helmet. Like, everybody has to be up on the balls of their feet on the sideline with a helmet on in a way that has not always been the case, at least that I can recall, for Ohio State, not just in the Ryan Day era, but even before that with Urban Meyer. Like, it was almost always these starters are going to be out there, especially on offense, until the game is well out of reach. And I don't know if that's feeding this, if it's a change in mentality, if it is a different energy. I'm seeing a different energy, and I don't know if I can say that that's the direct cause for it, but you certainly see there is an output somewhere.
They're correlated, I think. I don't know, like a chicken and egg thing, I guess, but that was different. I don't recall ever seeing guys go in the game that early, and you pointed that out to Ryan Day on Tuesday, and it did seem like he wants to be more intentional about that, at least in the games where it makes sense to, right? Which is that last week, and I think this week. I think we all understand that once the Northwestern game is in the rearview mirror, things really ratchet up in a pretty significant way with Indiana, Michigan, and then hopefully a Big Ten championship game berth. So this might be the last opportunity to do that. But I do think, I think this late into a season for a team like Ohio State, that like Ohio State has had its back up against the wall since the Oregon game, so maybe this doesn't quite apply, but I do think typically a team like this needs something to make sure you're locked in November, even when you are playing games like this. And I think whether it's the young guys playing more or whatever, throwing a cool new wrinkle out there offensively or defensively, I think that goes a long way in helping maintain the proper energy level. Yeah,
I mean, because otherwise it can get pretty easy to get complacent. And maybe it feels like we should be past this, and I would say perhaps that's right, but the Nebraska game was not that long ago. And you can see how easily, and that's not, I'm not even putting that solely on the players. In fact, I think you can largely make that point about the coaching staff, maybe more so than the players, but it is a top-down situation. They're going to take their cues from their leadership. So whether that's veteran players, whether that's their position coach, whether that's the head coach, like Ohio State saw how easily that could get away from them. Now, they did put that game away late, and Ryan Day did talk about that being a learning opportunity to get into a fourth quarter of a game and respond to that challenge. But they also know that they shouldn't be dealing with that against Purdue or Northwestern. And kudos to them, because they didn't do that on Saturday. And we'll see if they can back that up again and find that consistency in an approach on Saturday against Northwestern when the same risk would potentially be out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you play flat, anybody can come and make your life a little more difficult, right? I don't know. Nebraska, I think, is considerably better than Northwestern, but we've seen teams play weird games against lesser competition all across the country all year. So Ohio State is trying to avoid that. I think the way the Nebraska game went and the fact that Ohio State kind of found a spark in the fourth quarter has actually carried over to the game since then. So teams have those games. You want to try to avoid them. Ohio State did a really nice job of avoiding it last week, and now has to answer that call again this week.
These Tuesdays, right after a blowout and before another game that is expected to be one, are often weird. Like, there weren't a lot of real specifics that I grabbed onto. What did you learn?
I thought the answer to the question about the Jack package on defense was a little illuminating. Ryan Day did not couch that as a one-off necessarily. He did reiterate that it was sort of born out of not having Tyleik Williams available, or potentially not having him available. Seems like he will play this week, although we'll see when they get the game time, but they feel like they need to do that again. But maybe that it wasn't all tied to that. I think some of it does go back to what we talked about on Tuesday morning, like finding those change-ups to sprinkle in throughout the year to one, keep your guys fresh and engaged, but also keep the opponent wary of something popping up like that. And I don't know. I think the fan base reaction to that was, well, that was cool. It stunk. Don't do it again. Which I wouldn't put up much of a fight on because the results were what they were. But I think within those handful of snaps, it seemed like Ryan Day maybe saw a thing or two that maybe they can latch on to and continue to build on top of moving forward. So I very much thought that was the last we would see of it in that game. And I would maybe say I've changed my mind just slightly on that.
Well, I think you'd like to see the concept and maybe the actual personnel grouping would probably not be the way you'd want to run it. Now, he didn't get into that a ton, but that, I do think we're going to see that more, maybe not more. I think we're going to see it on Saturday. And I guess the part that I'd be curious about is if we are going to see that with Jack or JT or Tyleik Williams on the field, because that would look very different than what
I'd just like to get a look at it. See how it goes.
Yeah. Lots of conversation as well about the quarterback, Will Howard, and footwork. And
which I thought, because I don't view the deep ball stuff as a conversation about Will Howard's sort of raw arm strength. I think it is very much a mechanical conversation. And that is immediately where Ryan Day took it today when asked about it. He said, when Will's footwork is in sync with the timing of the play, he can really rip the ball, and Will said the same thing. But Ryan Day said that sometimes Will's feet are a little late to kind of get synced up with everything else, and then the ball comes out kind of funky sometimes. And Will also said that he needs to be a little more thoughtful about just kind of ripping it down the field rather than trying to place it. I think you can see that too on some of these throws. So it's they've been working at it all year. And it is something they have to clean up, but I've never really gotten the sense, for as much as we've asked about it and talked about it, that they are overly alarmed about their ability to throw the ball down the field.
It's a tough conversation to really have, because 90% of the time or more, his footwork has been pretty good, because you can't complete as many passes as he has. You can't be as accurate on the short to intermediate stuff without knowing what you're doing back there. So is there a little bit of breakdown at times? I mean, clearly the coaching staff and Will Howard himself agree with that. That is that caused solely by the feet? Is that timing? Is it, all the other factors that have been involved? A blown coverage is what they talked about. Chip Kelly talked about that ball was not supposed to go Carnell Tate's way 2 weeks ago at Penn State, and was a little bit of a surprise. Now, can you respond and react in real time? That's the mark and measure of a quarterback trying to win a national championship. So, I think all that is fair game. It's the notion that Will Howard can't do it, I don't think is accurate. But how do they execute it at the level that he's doing everything else? That's a little bit of an insight there.
Yeah, he is the kind of quarterback, Will Howard, that the feet are very important. There are a lot of guys out there who they could be standing on one foot and they'll throw the ball 50 yards on a dot down the field. And Ohio State has had quarterbacks who can do that. I think C.J. Stroud was a guy who was maybe not known for his off-platform throws, but was really good at them when he had to do them. He was also super precise with his mechanics almost all the time, so maybe we didn't notice it. But I think the mechanics matter very much to Will and the way he throws the ball. And we see it with the way that he is accurate on the short to intermediate stuff. And when plays are on time and in rhythm, I think he looks really good. I think he looks as good as any quarterback in the country. But you can also see, I think the Carnell Tate play is a great example of it. They were not expecting that to pop open as fast as it did, and you get a little bit rushed. So your feet aren't where they need to be, and you kind of push the ball down the field, and you just leave it a little bit short. And that's not the first time that's happened. They have to iron it out. They can't keep going through games leaving touchdowns on the board and us come back and say they're fine. Eventually it won't be fine, right? I understand that part of it, but I don't know that they're so far away from getting it corrected either that it should be all that concerning. And I would imagine, I think the weather conditions will be conducive to it, that they're going to try to throw the ball down the field some this week, I think, to make sure that is ironed out and looking the way it needs to be going into these bigger games at the end of the year.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm there. I feel like they want to get this game over with, honestly. You can
get it over with a couple 60-yard bombs.
Well, that's true.
3 of those, go home, hang out in the dugout, eat a hot dog.
You might be absolutely right about that, partner. That would do it. I don't know. Is there anything else that you felt like was pressing and urgent to get out on some Snappy J's?
I mentioned Tyleik Williams. Ryan Day was asked, will Tyleik be ready to go? He said yes. That was also kind of the message last week. So I think it's another game where if you don't think you need the play, maybe don't. But that's kind of the only injury thing. Carson Hinsman, Ryan Day said he came out of the game healthy. Obviously, he went back into the game. So yeah, I think that's probably it.
Yeah, those were the only sort of personnel updates. Ryan Day said a week ago that Will Kazmarek was looking at 2 more weeks. He's got 1 more under his belt. We'll see. I'd be surprised if the return was at Northwestern.
Yeah.
That's probably, again, an opportunity. You want to be 100% healthy. It'd be great if you did get him back acclimated and involved in the offense again before you get into Indiana and Michigan. But again, 30-point spread, probably not a game where you're going to take many chances, but there aren't a tremendous amount of current injuries that Ohio State is dealing with outside of the season enders.
No, there's not. I think Aaron Scott also, Ryan Day was asked about Aaron Scott, like kind of walking away from the podium when he said day to day. So I think he said like he'll have maybe an opportunity to play this week if the game gets out of hand again.
Yeah, we'll see. That practice resuming for the Buckeyes later on in here on a Tuesday in the afternoon, getting ready for the trip to Chicago to play Northwestern in Wrigley Field on Saturday, 11 a.m. Central Time, noon Eastern. Thanks for joining us on some Snap Judgments in here at the Woody. He's Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. We'll talk to you on the podcast daily Wednesday morning. See you there.